13 years ago, Henry threw a copy of divorce papers at me and said, "I sold the house to live with my girlfriend." His meaning wasn't clear to me at the time. "So, Eleanor, the divorce is already final, so get out of here and take Andrew with you." Those words stayed with me. I was surprised by Andrew's words when he returned from a job interview. I asked the interviewer in HR, "Does your company condone affairs?" My son's face lit up like never before. The interviewer apparently denied it, so I continued, "That's odd. Then why are you here?" Yes, the interviewer at that time was my ex-husband, Henry. "My name is Eleanor, 48 years old. I work at an insurance company call center. My only family is my son, Andrew. We were abandoned by Henry 13 years ago. I met Henry when I was 20 years old. I had just graduated from high school and was working as a clerk at a subsidiary of a pharmaceutical company. At the age of 20, I met Henry, who was then 27 and had been transferred. For some reason, he took an interest in me and started inviting me to dinner. I had just reached the legal age to drink. I was undoubtedly excited to be invited by an elite from the headquarters. This continued several times, and we started dating. Eventually, I became pregnant. I was upset. I thought he would be angry and break up with me. But then, Henry suggested we get married. When we went to visit my parents, my father, who was still alive at the time, said, "I'll make your daughter happy." At that time, marriages due to pregnancy were not spoken of favorably, so the wedding was simple. Eventually, our son Andrew was born. At that time, Henry returned to the head office, and I followed him and became a full-time housewife. And from there, I devoted myself to protecting the home. When Andrew entered elementary school, we received help from Henry's family and bought a house. I thought I had been leading a happy life, or so I thought. I was turning a blind eye from the sight of Henry coming home less and less as Andrew got older. At the age of 20, having married, I didn't know what a typical married life was like. I never questioned not knowing Henry's colleagues or superiors. Looking back, there were plenty of things that could have led to divorce. And on the day Andrew turned 14, Henry said these words and left us. "The divorce papers have already been filed and the house has been sold, so he wants us to leave." From a happy, full-time housewife at 35 to a single mother with a 14-year-old son. When I returned to my parents' house without any notice, my brother and his wife were cold to me. My father had already passed away at this time, and the house belonged to my brother's family. My mother was only about 60 at the time, but she was shrinking in the face of my brother's strong wife and blunt nieces. In the midst of that, Andrew and I were told this: "It's okay for a little while, but hurry up and find a job and leave." At that time, I couldn't think of a job that I could do. A high school graduate clerk. No skills. But even so, the two of us, mother and son, had to somehow make it through. I scoured job magazines and looked for jobs that would pay enough for me and my growing son to live on. Even so, I was still lucky. Andrew was 14. It's said to be a difficult time, but he still had some sense, much better than having a baby to take care of. So, I jumped into the insurance company's call center. My office experience came in handy for phone support. Initially a contract worker, and after a few years, finally became a full-time employee. But initially, it was exhausting, mentally and physically. But through this job, I learned something. At the time of divorce, I was clueless. High school graduate, not from an academic family. Even if that was not all, my ignorance was one of the reasons I was outspoken and ended up in financial trouble during the divorce. The divorce was due to infidelity. If that's the case, I should have made my husband pay alimony and child support, but I didn't think of it. My mother and brother were the same. Well, maybe not my mother, but my brother could have helped me somehow if he had any feelings for me, but he didn't. I realized my unfair treatment when I joined the insurance company and learned new things. But by then, it was too late. That's why I wanted my son to go to a better school, as much as he desired. Wisdom and knowledge can help. I didn't want him to go through what I did. And after 13 years, now my job, salary, and life are stable. Andrew entered a well-known public university's science program and even made it to the doctoral program. As a mother, it was surprising. and he said he'd somehow handle the tuition. Even amidst his busy studies, I wondered, but he somehow found non-repayable scholarships and secured them himself. I just put my mark on the guardian column. 4 years in college and 5 years in graduate school. Showing his talent even while enrolled, he received offers from various companies. It's like a crow giving birth to a hawk, indeed. Surely Andrew's future is bright. However, what resurfaces amid this is the memory of that day. Yes, when my ex-husband abandoned me. It's still swirling in me like a dark vortex. It was really sudden. As soon as Henry returned home, he tossed a crumpled piece of paper at me and our son. When I opened it, it was a copy of the divorce papers. I don't remember writing it, but my name was written in a handwriting similar to mine. "What do you mean?" I asked Henry. "I sold the house to live with my girlfriend." I didn't quite understand what Henry meant. Moreover, divorce was completely out of the blue. "So, Eleanor, the divorce is already final, so get out of here and take Andrew with you." He threatened that if I didn't leave within 3 days, he wouldn't be lenient. I was 35 at the time. After 14 years of being a housewife, I couldn't even think about what to do, so I headed back to my parents' house anyway. His voice from that day still echoes in my mind. I should probably forget about it. Now I live peacefully with my son, so I have no regrets. It's not lingering affection. It's regret toward my past self and resentment toward Henry. I know I can do something now, that's why. On one such holiday, I had decided to go to sleep late, thinking that I could relax for the first time in a while. My phone rang. Since the number displayed wasn't registered, I decided to ignore it and went back to bed. But the ringing continued incessantly. Eventually, a voice came from the voicemail. It was my ex-Mill. She kept saying repeatedly, "Give me your son." What could it be about? I wondered, but I decided to ignore it for now. In the evening, Andrew, dressed unusually in a suit, returned home. When I told him about the call during the day, he said, "Ha ha, I knew it would come." Andrew wore an unfamiliar expression and said such a thing, shaking his body vigorously, pounding the table, tears in his eyes, and laughing. "What on earth? Andrew, what did you do? It was a job interview today, right? Didn't I tell you? Stop lying. Tell Mom the truth." It's not exactly a lie. With that, Andrew began to talk about what happened that day. The interview was indeed real. It was a pharmaceutical company that had been scouting him for a while. But the company was the issue. The pharmaceutical company Andrew mentioned. It was where I used to work as a clerk at its subsidiary. Oh, it wasn't a coincidence. Andrew said it as if it were nothing. By the way, the name of the HR manager who interviewed me today was Henry. What? Funny thing is, this guy didn't even realize I was his son. Did you realize? Of course. I mean, first of all, I didn't need this interview in the first place. Really? Yay. Because this company came to scout me, right? There's no need for an interview. But the HR manager should have seen your resume, right? He probably did. He must have. But my face, hairstyle, and atmosphere are quite different from when I was in junior high, right? Well, that's true, but 13 years is a big difference. Besides, I wonder if he really remembered my face back then. Come to think of it, while I was only thinking about myself, Henry had also been estranged from Andrew. More importantly, with my current address and education background, even if the names are the same, he wouldn't realize I'm his son, right? That might be true. 13 years ago, when Andrew was in the 2nd grade of junior high school, he was, at best, in the top half of his class. However, after the divorce and transfer, he suddenly began to study extraordinarily hard. His grades skyrocketed out of nowhere. He entered a high school that matched his grades, and he maintained top grades in the science class. Then, he went to a famous national university. With a recommendation from the seminar professor in his 3rd year, he continued on to graduate school for 5 years. He went from a master's degree to a doctoral degree, and during that time, he apparently achieved various accomplishments in difficult matters that I couldn't understand. Scouting refers to companies wanting my son after seeing his achievements. Especially in the field of science and chemistry, several companies are interested. So I was in a position to choose. Andrew said it casually. That's why I asked him to give me an interview. I had looked into the fact that he was the HR manager. Before I knew it, I was surprised, but when I saw him, he didn't even change his expression at all. The interview was apparently a standard one. The only difference was that Andrew was able to ask more questions. I asked the interviewer in HR, "Does your company condone affairs?" At that moment, Andrew's face was filled with a smile like I had never seen before. "And what did the HR manager say?" "I mean, to that. Of course, it would not be ethically permissible, right? That makes me laugh." So I kept going. "That's funny. Then why are you there?" And the HR manager's face instantly froze. Andrew couldn't stop laughing. Then, thankfully, the senior managing director next to him asked me what my statement meant. So I took this out. It was crumpled and wrinkled paper. Yes, it was a copy of the divorce papers that Henry had thrown at me that day. This is a copy of something that my mother was tricked into submitting by this person a long time ago. "What does your company think of this? You kept that copy all this time." I had thought I'd thrown it away. No, I definitely tossed it in the trash. I didn't want to see it. I thought I had to leave everything behind. Yeah, I picked up what Mom threw away. So I kept it in a clear file with creases, thinking it shouldn't be lost. Why? Because it's evidence of what he did to Mom and of forging a private document. Gah. And it's more than that. There's forgery and use of a forged private document, among other things. Besides, the divorce papers themselves were invalid at the time, so marrying another woman then constitutes bigamy. Bigamy. I'm no expert, but I asked a friend from law school about it. He said it could be a crime. A crime. Yay, clearly a crime. So I made sure to tell them right there, "Isn't this forgery of a private document?" I handed a copy to the senior managing director. "I see. A copy of a copy is here because of the original copy. Because his fingerprints are on this copy. I wouldn't hand over the actual evidence." Then, guess what he did? What did he do? He suddenly stood up and shouted, You treat your father like a criminal, that's it." And then he told the executive director that what I was saying was a complete lie and that he was mistaken. I felt like laughing. What is that man talking about? But you know, this senior managing director is quite something. He seemed to understand exactly what I was trying to say. The focus of his questioning shifted towards him. "You know how power dynamics work in the company, right?" He must have been eyeing the next senior managing director position. It seems like the senior managing director was good at assessing people. First, he kicked him out of the room. Then he turned to me and said, "Is this why you asked for an interview with this company and not to join it?" I said, "Yes," and I apologized. "I am very grateful for the offer from your company, and I feel that it is an attractive company. But I was wondering, what if it was an unethical company that would leave that person in place?" Just like that. I couldn't believe he said that casually at an interview. The senior managing director is really capable. Regardless of joining, he thanked me for the insight. When he got divorced and remarried a younger woman, he wondered why, and even remembered Mom. Really? Yay. Remember when Mom said their wedding was small? The senior managing director was one of the few attendees. He was the boss back then. Oh, I see. But he said something about himself being cheated on, not demanding alimony, yet divorcing her. Wondered why he didn't take me in despite that. He even suspected from my photo and name. At that time, Mom had no such knowledge, so we were left alone. I'm really sorry. If it were now, I'd fight with a lawyer, but back then, it's okay. I know Mom was a housewife. Suddenly having to work and raise me was tough. I barely remember him. Always busy with work, right? No, I don't even know if he was actually at work. Yay. Henry wasn't around much back then. Or, marrying me was probably a mistake for him. He rarely took me to his parents' place. Only during New Year's, and when we went, I was stuck in the kitchen. Then, we barely saw each other due to work. He told me he bought a house, but he decided, and before I knew it, we were going to live in it. I realized we weren't a normal family as soon as I started elementary. So, I acted out a bit in elementary. You did that. Early teenage rebellion. So, when I entered junior high, I noticed signs of him having an affair. What? I didn't tell Mom because I thought it would upset you. But I regretted not saying anything. Especially when he threw you the divorce papers and left, in a strained voice. I had never heard such a voice from Andrew. I wanted to have a weapon that no one could touch but me. A weapon. Something that couldn't be touched by anyone else. I thought if I could turn it into a weapon, I could confront him someday. Then Andrew said this. I feel bad, but Mom's situation served as a lesson for me. A lesson? Yeah, it might have. He easily left Mom, and no one could argue with that because Mom and her family didn't have the knowledge to fight back. Honestly, I'm also mad at my uncles. You, mad at your uncles too. It's a hassle, so I won't say anything. But even if I succeed in a good company now, I'll never associate with them. Grandma's different. Is that so? I felt relieved. Well, Grandma only told me about Mom's situation back then, and she kept apologizing to me, saying sorry. That's why. When was that? Since I started college. It was creepy how Uncle and his daughters, my cousins, kept eyeing me, knowing I was a university student. What? The nieces were doing such things. Hey, Mom, how about Grandma? Can't she take us in? She's always apologizing to Mom. It's painful to see her being so uncomfortable around Auntie and those guys at the other house. Thank you. After finishing the conversation, I mentioned something that had been bothering me. By the way, I've been getting calls from unknown numbers a lot lately. Let me see, Andrew said, taking my phone. This one. That's his parents' house. I got it from the executive director. Andrew spat out, pressing the call button. He put it on speaker. Hello. Hey, is that you, Andrew? The voice from the other side was my ex-mill, calling me by my first name. How disrespectful, muttered Andrew under his breath. Oh, I heard about it from your dad. He said you even went to the university's doctoral program and got scouted by the company. It's amazing how a boy born from that mother turned out so well. It must be in our blood. What are you talking about? Andrew muttered again. Hey, would you consider being adopted into our family? You'll be busy from now on, and you'll need money, right? It's better than being with a poor woman like that. And now that you're already a doctor, you must be of marriageable age, right? If you agree, I'll set you up with a good match. How about it? Are you listening, Andrew? I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am. I said coldly to my smartphone. By the way, I was wondering if you had heard that I was the one who cheated. Well, that's... Oh, I see, that's not the case. In that case, Andrew says he won't go easy on you, so I'll take his place. It's been a while. I heard from the managing director at work that Mom was accused of cheating, and I was surprised, but I understand now you were also involved. And no, that's not true. We were deceived by Henry. When you refer to Mom as that woman, do you realize you were aiding a crime? Unfortunately, the statute of limitations has expired, but your son has committed forgery of divorce papers and remarried, making him a bigamist. I'm ashamed. I want nothing to do with you, the parents of such a person. But eventually, my mother and I will have a word with the lawyer you appoint. Do you not want the inheritance? When I die, it'll be yours. Andrew snorted. That's nothing. We should worry about the alimony instead. Andrew said, cutting the call. Did I go too far? I shook my head vigorously. At the same time, laughter welled up from the bottom of my heart. Well, if you've done so much for me, I need to step up too. That's the spirit. Andrew slapped my back. After that, I got a recommendation for a law firm through Andrew's friend and decided to pursue alimony. While the statute of limitations for regular cheating-related alimony claims is 3 years, I learned here about the exclusion period. It's valid for 20 years from the act of cheating. I found out about the cheating from Henry's mouth 13 years ago. But I didn't bother to investigate who he married or anything like that afterward. I didn't want to think about it, and I didn't have the time. So, I decided to investigate it again. And among the items to be included in the alimony claim was the fact that he forged a divorce certificate with me and married another woman on top of it, which constitutes forgery of a private document and bigamy. Although it's beyond the statute of limitations to seek criminal charges for this matter, it became a weapon in claiming alimony, just as a weapon for seeking compensation. I claimed compensation from Henry and his current wife. Also, I claimed 4 years of child support for Andrew from Henry. Since then, my phone has been buzzing non-stop again. Am I a bigamist? Who told you that? Thanks to you, I'm finished. You're not just ruining me, but also my wife and kids, huh? Come on, haven't I treated you well for 14 years? Don't think it'll end like this. So I replied once, just like this, then why don't you sell the house we're living in? And I changed my phone number. Now, the result. Henry, who faced a double attack from me and Andrew, paid compensation, was ousted from the position of HR manager, and demoted to deputy factory manager at a distant location. By the way, I heard this from the senior managing director himself when we met again. Apparently, in that position, he's practically a lowly errand runner, unable to oppose the factory manager. After all, even though the statute of limitations has passed, now that multiple crimes have come to light, his reputation has hit rock bottom. He's been on the elite track within the company, but it's over now. The pharmaceutical factory is located far from the capital. Henry, with the transfer, sold his condo to compensate me. That was the only way to pay the amount we demanded. His wife and kids also went along. Seems like she has nowhere else to go. She got married at the age of 20, already a housewife with a high-status husband. And that turned out to be her downfall. She wanted to stay in the capital with the kids, but it was impossible. Her parents' home is as remote as the new assignment. Seems like she's disliked by her in-laws too. But even considering the in-laws, I have my doubts. From their treatment towards me, it's understandable, but frankly, they should have sorted out their son long before remarrying a 20-year-old bride twice. They should have advised their criminal son before cutting off their unpromising grandchildren. Well, maybe that's why they turned to Andrew. Though, look, we have a great-grandson here. But that's irrelevant to Andrew. By the way, I heard an interesting story. When we settled the compensation, the lawyer told me, well, he's really a city boy through and through. And what about it? A car is essential in the new place. I couldn't help but clap hands. They are over 50, going to driving school, and desperately trying to get a regular driver's license. Both him and his wife. The wife too. Well, you see, they can't survive without a car. They need it for picking up and dropping off their kids and for grocery shopping. Plus, in places like that, even if you want to work part-time, you won't get hired without transportation. I see, I couldn't help but laugh. By the way, I have a regular driver's license. My mother insisted that I get one, even lending me the money for it. That turned out to be the right decision. Just hearing their story is hilarious. A prideful former elite in their 50s. They'll realize the fear of obtaining a license while being chased by daily chores and scolded by driving school instructors. And then, the following spring, Andrew joined another company's research institute and seems to enjoy every day finally being able to devote himself to his own research. The revenge is over. So now, I just want to enjoy myself to the fullest. This is my youth from now on. Well, when that happens, I wonder when he'll find someone he likes and get married. Well, quick marriages aren't necessarily good, you know. My mother, who now lives with us, says with emotion. Exactly. For Andrew, who had no time for that kind of thing, I hope he'll take his time to find the right person. With Andrew's job transition, we rented a slightly larger room somewhere between our workplaces and moved. For a while, the three of us want to spend our days peacefully enjoying the days that have finally come.